from the scamsters to the criminals, to the cyber attackers, to the totalitarians. AI is a very powerful weapon.
I've never met anyone like it.
He could hack anybody's phone in a matter of minutes. Who is that guy? Who can do that?
Thomas is the most interesting man in the world.
He's one of my favorite people on the planet. Inventor.
Wicked smart.
The master of cutting corners.
If you had a dead body in your trunk, who would you call?
He would get arrested immediately in a lineup.
I stood in line to get his autograph.
You know, his mouth can barely keep up to his brain.
I don't actually know what Pablos does.
A hacker magician.
Man of the future. 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 Future.
We're at a moment where, you and I and all our friends have tens of thousands of dollars of compute per month that we're getting for like a couple $100 at a time. And a lot of it's we're all just playing, running, building shit and throwing it away just to try to get our heads around the bounds of where this gets us to. It feels like none of us know, and it's really hard to place a bet when you don't know you don't have some constraint. If I'm going to open up a taco wagon, I need to know that there's going to be customers at least for a while in order to justify investing in that. And right now we're just at this point where there's no variables that are hard coded. And so kind of like we talked about with the SaaS products and things, you couldn't guess where it lands. The build out for AI is essentially predicated on this idea that 8 billion people, or at least 5 or 6 billion of them, are going to need a schlo to compute every month. That's going to, one way or another, pay off and be better. And so if you sort of just project out, maybe that takes a couple years, maybe it takes a couple decades, but at some point, there's almost no question that that's true. You're going to need a bunch of compute, maybe we'll have better algorithms, maybe you need less or more compute, but you're going to end up at this point where, kind of like an iPhone or a PC, you're going to have this cyborg relationship where a lot of what your brain was doing or couldn't do is now farmed out to a machine, whether it's in your pocket or local or in a cloud. One way or another, we're going to get there. And I know you've thought about some of these, implications. One example from the book is that I've been sort of excited about for a really long time is this notion that maybe I think of computers in general and AI in particular as a tool to help humans make better decisions fundamentally. And you could aim that at whatever you want, but we've been in this caveman mode where we're making decisions with, sex organs instead of making them with, even with our brains, because our brains are too feeble to even make a good decision a lot of times because it doesn't have enough data, it doesn't have enough history, enough wisdom, enough shots on goal. It can't do enough simulations. And now the computers can do that, and they can collect all that and gather that, so they can help us make better decisions. And I've been fortunate to work on projects where we were able to really do that and really prove that and really make the world better in some ways. And I'm super convicted about that. But it seems to me like in a world, maybe, again, like I said, you're better at tweeting than me, so bear with me. Takes a while, but I'm almost there. So if I could imagine a world in the future, to me, there's just no way for that world to not be better, because humans could be messy getting there, but we are going to be able to make better decisions. That could mean individually, it could mean, certainly going to mean in companies, and maybe in a century in governments. And so society could actually get better because we spend less of our energy and resources and attention on poor decisions, poor policies, poor choices, and it's just, even if you could improve that by 1 or 2%, the compound interest over a century would be insane. So all we got to do is use these tools to make humans be slightly less idiotic, and we should end up with a vastly better future. I mean, is any part of this, incongruent with what you've, sort of arrived at and thinking this stuff through?
Some parts are, some parts aren't.
Yeah.
So
shoot some holes in that.
Because on the one hand, I sympathize and agree, but on the other hand, I think there's another side to this. So you're saying that there's no way AI will not lead to a much better world. I think, and that's what I've been working for all my life, AI can and probably will lead to a much better world. However, there are also plenty of ways in which it can lead to a much worse world.
Yeah.
And the difference is us.
Yeah, that's right.
Like, I'm an optimist about technology, and like a lot of people, because at the end of the day, every way of technology has turned out for the better.
Yeah.
But paradoxically, it was by worrying about it. If we sit, I like to say I'm a realistic optimist. Sure. If we say AI is going to be utopia, then things will go wrong. Yeah. If we worry about all the things that could go wrong with AI, as with previous technologies, and try to make sure that it's used for the good things, not the bad ones, etc., then it will be then things will turn out for the much better, right?
Do you have an example of where worrying paid off? What gives you that conviction?
What is a good example? Let me give you not the best example, but in a way the most eye-popping, right? I'll go straight to the to the meat. Nuclear weapons, right? First of all, there was quantum mechanics one day, right? And then they figured out that because of this, you could make nuclear weapons, right? And number one, I mean, there's a reason I'm picking this. I said it's not the best one, but in a way it is, right? Because it's the worst one, right? So what happened with nuclear weapons? First of all, they put an end to World War II. Yep. And a lot of people didn't die because of that. Nuclear weapons, let me put it this way, the ledger on nuclear weapons for now is immensely positive, right? And then, people, exactly the two things that I'm talking about. How do we keep the nuclear weapons under control? Yeah. Prevent proliferation and whatnot. And honestly, in the future, this book is still not finished. But so far, we've done that. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, people forget this now, but in the 50s and 60s, nuclear power was the technology of the future. Yeah. People figured out how to harness that for good uses, and they did. Mm-hmm. Maybe not as much as they should have, because if we had more nuclear power today, we would have. But that's a different question. But you see, we're worrying about it, trying to promote the right things and prevent the bad things helped. Yeah. Right. That's one example. But let me make, I think, the bigger point underlying what you're saying here. What you're saying, and again, I can't help smiling, I sympathize with, but history, particularly with information technologies, but I think maybe with most of them, everybody always hopes and thinks this is the internet will be, peace and love, and that whole, ethos, right? Which we love, right? And I think it's underappreciated these days. But at the same time, sooner or later, every technology gets subverted for everybody's bad purposes, right? And there is no way that will not happen with AI. In fact, it's already happening across the board, from the scamsters to the criminals, to the cyber attackers, to the totalitarians. AI is a very powerful weapon, so it'll make whoever is uses it for whatever purpose. And now, here's the most important part. You're saying, if only we weren't so idiotic about things, right? Here's the crucial thing. And in fact, this is one of the key sections in the last section of the master. In the last chapter of Master, where I talk about the future, but I've actually found that I have a hard time getting people to understand this. But this is super important. Okay, and it's like this. Let's start with your brain, and then so. You have your genes, and you have your brain. Yeah. Right. Why are brains good, and in particular, the human brain, right? Because genes evolve very slowly. Yeah. Right. Genes need the whole lifetime of a creature to learn a few bits of information. It's ridiculous, right? Brains learn, in particular mammalian brains, they learn so much faster. It's unbelievable how much faster they learn, right? So this is a fantastic evolutionary advantage, right? Well, for the genes, not necessarily. Mm-hmm. Because what's to prevent that fast evolving thing, right? I mean, I, as an AI engineer, appreciate this, right? Yes. Right. How do you keep that thing under control? Mm-hmm. And how do your genes keep your brain under control? Through your emotions. Okay. By making you obsessed. Yeah. Obsessed is the right word. With food, sex, fight or flight, right? You're not obsessed with food, and I'm not, because we have plenty of food. But if you were starving, you would be obsessed, right? So it's all about the objective functions, right? Mm-hmm. Genes provide an objective function to control your brain in the form of your emotions and your impulses. Yes. And now, the good news is, I agree with you, we'll do a lot of things much better with AI, right? But also, those impulses are all still there, and they will be more empowered than ever. So we'll do a larger volume of stupider things than ever before, right? It'll empower all our bad impulses like you've never seen. By the way, this also, to pursue that, to the point that I made in the master algorithm, there's all this question about alignment and AI getting out of control and blah, 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 right? And, the anthropic folks are obsessed with it, and many other people are too. And the analogy that I made was like, picture two DNA strands in a bacteria talking to each other, whatever, a billion years ago. And one of them saying to the other, Diana, this whole idea of giving rise to multicellular creatures is kind of dubious, right? They'd be able to do a lot more, but we might lose control of them.
Yeah.
Perfectly reasonable thing to think. Now, what happened?
Yeah.
Right? Even now, they haven't lost control of us.
Right.
The animals, the multicellular creatures are the greatest hit in evolution.
Osmosis and
right? Yeah. It's unbelievable. And why do they do that? Because the genes, because intelligence. There's something to remember that I think is like intelligence and control are different things.
Okay.
You could have an infinite intelligence that is still under your control.
Yeah.
Also, getting back to the computational resources, AI has intelligence, right? Because it's NP complete, right? Like it has unlimited appetite for resources, but it doesn't matter. Again, I don't know why it's so hard for people to see this.
Yeah.
We want to cure cancer.
Yeah.
We can do it with AI and lots of data, and without them, we can't. Talk to any of the best cancer researchers, and they'll tell you this. But do you want to make your cancer curing AI as smart as possible or dumb enough to be controlled?
Yeah,
right?
Exactly.
There's no question.
Yeah, I'm with you. I think that's really well put. In my view, there's a kind of, there's a kind of life cycle that you go through with every new technology. There's these developmental phases. And so I sort of describe we're in maybe junior high with social media, still pimply, very poorly behaved. Half the shit we do, we regret. We're barely in preschool with AI, but we're in grads. We're like in retirement with shit that can actually kill you, like fire. Like we give fire to every human on Earth. You can actually kill people with it, and we've gotten it under control because our relationship with it has matured. And so I think if you just look on these longer time horizons, people do get these, they internalize these technologies, they figure out how much is too much, how much is too little, they develop a more mature relationship with them, same as drugs and alcohol. And so we're impatient, but I feel like that's part of what gives me the sense of optimism. I don't think I'm Pollyannish about the future having to be better, but I think it absolutely can be better. And the balance, like you said, is in us. And if you look in the long run, like even with the nuclear weapons, it is an example where we have done pretty well with them overall, in spite of our, base instincts. And I think the last thing I'll say is, I think that process has to be kind of messy. I don't think it's worrying that prevents the catastrophe. I think you have to do a lot of trial and error. You have to break things and figure out what doesn't work, and then go do more of the stuff that does work. And you look at most of the things humans have improved on or done well with over in history. I feel like that it had to go through some process like that, and you can't skip it.
So you're absolutely right, and that is a great analogy.
Yeah.
So looking at, in particular, social media and AI, social media is indeed still in high school, and here's the thing. Everybody's talking about, like, how do you restrict social media and blah, blah, blah. And again, what I've always felt about social media and still do is that social media, the potential for good is amazing, but it's an immature technology. Mm-hmm. Right now, it's just speaking to your reptilian brain. Mm-hmm. What we need to do is not tamp down on social media, but figure out how to bring it to the next level where it makes us better as a society.
100%.
Right? And indeed, with AI, we're still in kindergarten. Yeah. And indeed, there is no choice but to do trial and error. And like, to go back to another example of the good things versus the bad ones, cars were amazing. Many of the fears were unfounded, but people did die in car crashes. Yes. So if you have this whole thing of like traffic signals and markings on lanes, and like all of this is obvious, but this is how we achieved our, and like fire, right? We have all these, things that you follow, sprinklers, fire detectors, fire stations. And you're right? This is such a key point, and like so under by the activists and the politicians and the bureaucrats. If you make all these regulations about AI now, you're making regulations about the wrong things.
That's right.
And preventing the trial and error from happening.
Yep, I agree with you.
Yes, unfortunately, there will be some bad things that happen, but for the greater good, we got to see what are the things that go, because that's the only thing that has it. Like, my colleague Stuart Russell, right? And then people like, Max Tegmark, charlatan, have picked up on this, right? And they're like, we need AI that is provably safe.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
you must be joking. Not even Windows is probably saying it, let alone AI.
Well, that's exactly it. And I think there's a kind of, I think it's morally irresponsible to regulate things you don't understand. And we just have to go through this process of learning. And, there will be some collateral damage. Hopefully most of it is voluntary. But along the way, to get our heads around any new technology, and failing to do that.
You know what I used to say to politicians asking, about regulating AI.
Before they stopped asking.
even but like that's one. But there's a better approach, right? In multiple ways, right? And even now, right? What I say to them is like, why don't you try using AI before you try regulating it?
There you go.
Because they have no freaking clue what.
100%.
I remember being at this session, like that was organized, I think, American in Congress.
Yeah.
I think at the request of a senator, to his credit, right, on AI, right, pre-ChatGPT, maybe around 2020, let's say, right.
Okay.
And at the end of it, we were chatting, and he, just me and a couple of people, and the editor of Scientific American, and this, very nice senator, and he said, "So, what laws shall we make about AI?" And I thought to myself, "Oh shit,
Yeah,
this is how it works, right?" Like. You should try using it first for several reasons, because there's a lot of good that comes from you using it.
Yeah.
Right. Second of all, what gives you authority to regulate something that other people understand and you don't?
There you go.
Right. And third of all, let it until you're using it.
Yeah. I think it's just this wildly misguided concept, but don't get me started. It's out of my jurisdiction. But ma'am, anything that you think is exciting that we didn't talk about? We can talk about the book. Why don't you? I was thinking I listened to some other interview with you where you described the book. So rather than making you do it again, because I already am reading it, I'll just grab that and stick it in for people so they can.
So just to be clear, which book are you talking about?
2040.
Oh, 2040, yeah.
And we could we can talk about master algorithm too, just so people understand where to get more. How do you feel about the master algorithm now? Has it? Do you wish you could write it again or amend it, or is it still holding up, or what do you think is?
It has held up remarkably well. A lot of people have told me this. It wasn't by accident.
Yeah.
A really core part of why I wrote it and how I wrote it is that I wanted to write something about AI that would be, in some sense, the perennial truths.
Okay, great.
Because on top of all this day-to-day change, the basics in AI, including the 5 major paradigms, which is the book covers, right? Deep learning being one, neural networks, symbolic AI, etc. They've been the same since the 50s.
Yeah.
Right? And the book is mainly focused on that. So there's nothing in the book that is outdated, right?
Cool.
However, there are a couple of ways in which I would update it or write a new book, right? One is all the stuff that's happened since, of course, particularly in deep learning, but also in the ways that has been combined with symbolic, AI and whatnot. And also, of course, in what has actually happened, right? So I had the final chapter making predictions about the future, which I think is very much on the money. Mostly it fails by not going far enough.
Yeah.
When I say like, you guys are doing this all, but there's going to be a backlash about privacy, which at the time was like, yeah, maybe. And now, well, right. And there's a whole bunch of stuff like that.
Okay. All right. Super cool. And then 2040, I'll just stick in the description you've done, because it's you did a great job before. And I know the more times you have to describe your own work, the harder it is to, bring the enthusiasm. But it's such a delightful read. It had to be fun to write, especially since, there's no new episodes of the Silicon Valley TV show. We have to get a new. So are you tempted to take that and drop it into one of the AIs that could make a movie out of it, or turn it into manga or something else? I mean, at this point, it's getting really close to being able to do that.
That thought has definitely crossed my mind.
Yeah.
I'm only one, and it's not the highest priority thing, but it is totally asking for that. And in fact, the way you put it, I think, is very nice. In a way, the ideal. One way to describe what 2040 is to go where Silicon Valley never did.
Yeah.
To take it way beyond, right? What was good about Silicon Valley was that it was, the guy who created the industry for a while.
Yeah.
So he actually knows what he's talking about.
Yeah.
And unlike a lot of Hollywood takes on Silicon Valley, it had this beautiful thing that it worked both for the outsiders and the insiders.
Yeah.
The outsiders saw what the tech industry is like, but the insiders knew exactly what real things each part was riffing on. And 2040 is exactly like that. There is no element in 2040, from the whole plot to the main characters, the companies, down to things that happen. everything is there for a reason.
All referential.
Everything is there to illustrate and give a take
Yeah.
on where things are going in AI. And just to give you like the barest example, right? I started writing that book in 2020. It was like my COVID project, right? A lot of people wrote novels during 2020, pre-ChatGPT. And when ChatGPT came out, it actually became easy to describe to people what the book was. I said, it's a satire of Silicon Valley where ChatGPT runs for president. And at that point, people were like, ah, ha, ha.
Yeah.
But before it was like, I said, a chatbot runs for president. Like, what? What is that, right?
Got it.
And it's been part of my, I mean, as you say, like writing that one of the most fun I've ever had.
Oh, wow.
Right?
Okay.
Partly because, it's like music, right? Like listening to music or sports, right? Listening is one thing. Playing it is a different level.
Yeah, yeah.
Or like, watching football versus it, right?
Okay.
Same thing with writing a book.
Wow.
But the other one is that like, it makes fun of so many things one after another, right? And like, and part of the fun has actually been since seeing the stuff that I had there happen, one thing after another.
Yeah.
Right.
Great.
It's because like
Yeah.
at the end of the day, it wasn't so hard to
Worried
predict.
about. I mean, Idiocracy turned out to be the most prescient film of all time. I'm sort of worried. I haven't finished the book, but I'm already worried that you're going to end up with, beating that record.
To go back to an earlier topic, right? And this I think is what a lot of really good novelists, in particular best science fiction, also like. If you know what people's impulses are,
Yeah.
right? To me, a good it's very near future on purpose, right? Human nature doesn't change. And I used to say, now there's this new technology that wasn't there before. What happens when the two collide?
Yeah.
And then the inevitable happens.
Yeah, that's right.
Like what happened with social media was inevitable, right?
Right.
And similar things will happen with AI, including stuff that I want.
About 2/3 of the way through. I'm excited to finish it. So where's audiobook?
No, there is an audiobook.
I couldn't find it.
Really? It's on Audible. It's on one of the biggest, or I think it's Audible. I hope I didn't just insult my audiobook publisher. But there is a
It's not on Audible. At least I couldn't find it.
Something.
If there's a different one.
Sorry, Audible is the one that's owned by Amazon?
Yeah.
No, okay, sorry, it's not Audible.
Is it on? It's called. There is.
It's one of the top 3.
Okay. All right. I'll check it. I must have just not looked on the other platforms. All right.
It's
Did you read it?
I listened to parts of it just to see what it was like.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I will. I'll get that too, and we'll share it with people, and I'll put in the notes where it's at. I also brought you my book, which is the #1 bestseller on deep tech.
Oh, cool! Thank you.
And you don't have to read it, but I wrote every word. There's no AI in it. Well, there's AI in it, but
What is it about?
So this is a book about because I invest in all these mad scientists, and a lot of them have invented new technologies, and we don't invest in them unless the technology can make something 10 times better or solve some big problem. And most people don't get to see that stuff. And so it gives you a sense of optimism about the future, because for almost any problem, you can see how, holy shit, we could do it so much better and solve those problems. And so I wanted to make a book about examples of that, but there's a lot of stories in there from my weird career, and that's what people seem to like the most. And so
people love stories.
It's a funny book. Yeah, I think you said that you thought that, the reason to write 2040 is that people love stories and they can relate to that in a way that they won't from a,
Exactly. Part of my motivation was realizing that no amount of very good explaining beats just giving people a story that illustrates the point.
Yeah, we're all spending decades learning that same lesson. So I have to figure out how to make these stories more accessible. That's what I'm trying to do. And so there's a bunch of them in there.
I actually went in preparing to write the book and, listened, for example, to a master by, who's the guy that wrote the Da Vinci Code?
Oh, Dan Brown.
Dan Brown. I listened to a bunch of stuff like this, but Dan Brown is a good example. He knows how to write, sorry, Dan.
Yeah.
He's a great guy, schlocky thrillers.
Yeah, I can't
expect that skill. And I'm like, I'm not writing, 24 is not a schlocky thriller, but it needs that skeleton to keep people hooked. And there's a recipe and you can learn it.
There was one I listened to for the Stephen King's book about writing. Did you listen to that one or read that one?
I didn't, but yeah.
That one was really good.
Yeah.
I don't know that I learned anything useful from it.